Chapter 8 of the Book of Saints and Friendly Beasts. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Melissa Green. The Book of Saints and Friendly Beasts by Abbie Farwell Brown. Chapter 8. Saint Blaise and His Beasts. This is the story of a saint who loved all animals and whom the animals therefore loved in return. Saint Blaise was the son of wealthy people in Sebaste, a town of Armenia near Turkey, in the days when it was fashionable to be a heathen. He was not like the other boys, his playmates, for he was a Christian, full of sympathy for everything that lived. More than all things, he longed to learn how to help the creatures that he loved, men and women, the children, the dumb beasts, and everything that suffered and was sick. So he went to school and studied medicine, and by he grew up to be a wise man with a big, tender heart. Everyone loved him, for he did great good among the people of his village, tending their children and healing their cattle and household pets. Nor did he neglect even the wild beasts, for Saint Blaise loved to go away into the woods and fields where he could learn about the untamed creatures and teach them to be his friends. The birds and beasts and fishes grew to love him because he never hurt them, but talked to them kindly and healed them when they were sick or wounded. The timid creatures were brave in his presence, and the fierce ones grew tame and gentle at the sound of his voice. The little birds brought him food, and the four-footed beasts ran errands and were his messengers. The legends say that they used to visit him in his forest home, which was a cave on Mount Argus near the city of Sebaste. Every morning they came to see how their master was faring, to receive his blessing and lick his hands in gratitude. If they found the saint at his prayers, they never disturbed him, but waited in a patient, wistful group at the door of his cave until he rose from his knees. One day a poor woman came to him in great distress because a wolf had carried away her pig. Saint Blaise was sorry to hear that one of his friends had done so wicked a thing. He bade the woman go home, and said he would see what could be done. He called the wolf up to him and shook his head gravely at the culprit. "You bad wolf," he said. "Don't you know that the pig was a friend of mine too? He is not handsome, but he is nice and plump, and he is the only pig of a poor lone woman. How could you be so selfish? Go straight home and get my friend Pig, and drive him down to the woman's house." Then the wolf went sheepishly away, and did what the good saint had told him to do, for the pig had not yet been made into pork. And when the poor woman saw the pig run grunting into her yard, chased by the repentant wolf, she fell upon his fat neck and wept tears of joy. Then the wolf went back to Saint Blaise, who told him he was a good wolf, and gave him a dish of fresh milk to cool his throat. Saint Blaise was chosen bishop by the Christians, who loved him for his piety and his charity, and the wood beasts were glad of this honor done to their dear master. But the poor creatures did not know how dangerous it was to be a Christian in those days, and especially to be a bishop who had much power over the people. For the heathen were jealous of him, and feared that he would make all the people Christians too, when they saw the wonderful cures which his medicines made. But they could not find him, for he was living in his forest cave. This was 316 years after Christ's birth, and the cruel emperor Licinius was causing many Christians to be killed. Agricola was the governor whom Licinius had appointed in Sebaste, and he sent his soldiers into the mountains to get some wild beasts for the games in the arena, where the Christians were to be put to death. But they could not find any beasts at all in the mountains, or in the fields, or valleys, or woods. They thought this very strange, but by and by they came by accident to the cave where Saint Blaise lived, and there were the animals, all the fierce beasts whom they feared, lions, tigers, leopards, bears, and wolves, making their morning call upon Saint Blaise and sitting quietly about. In the midst was Blaise himself, praying so earnestly that he never noticed the men with nets and spears who had come to entrap the beasts. Although the creatures were frightened, they did not move nor growl for fear of disturbing their master, but kept quite still, glaring at the soldiers with big yellow eyes. The men were so astonished at the sight that they stole away without capturing an animal or saying a word to Saint Blaise, for they thought he must be Orpheus or some heathen god who charmed wild beasts. They went to the governor and told him what they had seen, and he said, "Ho, I know he is a Christian. The Christians and the beasts are great friends. Go, and bring him to me straight away." And this time the soldiers went in the afternoon when the animals were taking their after-dinner nap. So they found St. Blaise quite alone, again at his devotions. They told him he must come with them, but instead of being frightened, he said joyfully, "I am ready. I have long expected you." For he was a holy man willing to die for his faith, and holy men often knew what was going to happen to them. It was on his way to prison that St. Blaise cured his last patient, a sick child whose mother brought him to the holy man's feet begging help. The child had swallowed a bone and was choking to death, poor little thing, but St. Blaise touched the baby's throat, and the trouble was gone. This is why in olden times people with sore throats always prayed to St. Blaise to make them well. The good bishop was put in prison, and after that they tortured him, trying to make him promise not to be a Christian any longer. But St. Blaise refused to become a heathen and to sacrifice to the gods, and so they determined that he must die. They would have put him in the arena with the wild beasts, but they knew that these faithful creatures would not harm their friend. The beasts could not save him from the cruel men, but at least they would not do anything to hurt him. Those which were still left in the forest howled and moaned about his deserted cave and went sniffing and searching for him everywhere, like stray dogs who have lost their master. It was a sad day for the wood creatures when St. Blaise was taken from them forever. The soldiers were told to drown St. Blaise in the neighboring lake, but he made the sign of the cross as they cast him from the boat, and the water bore him up, so that he walked upon it as if it were a floor, just as Christ did once upon the Sea of Galilee. When the soldiers tried to do the same, however, thinking to follow and recapture him, they sank and were drowned. At last, of his own free will, St. Blaise walked back to the shore, clothed in light and very beautiful to look upon, for he was ready and eager to die. He let the heathen seize him, and soon after this was beheaded. In very old times it used to be the custom in England on the 3rd of February to light great bonfires on all the hills, blazes, in honor of his name. And we can well believe that all the little animals came out of their dens and burrows and nests at the sight of these fires, and thought with loving hearts of the dear old saint who so many years ago used to be kind to their ancestors, the beasts in the forests of Armenia. End of chapter 8. Recording by Melissa Green.